All right, ready to dive into SQL.
Let's do it.
If you're looking to level up your SQL game, you're definitely in the right place.
Absolutely.
This is for anyone who wants to go from, SQL newbie to basically in SQL Pro.
Yeah.
SQL is kind of like the key that unlocks all these amazing things you can do with data.
Mm.
It's the language that lets you talk to databases.
Like those massive collections of information that pretty much power everything these days.
Right, and the cool thing is SQL has been around for ages.
It has, like way back to the 70s.
I've even heard it was almost called SQL.
Yeah, that's right.
But names aside, what makes it so relevant even after all these years?
Well, I think understanding a little bit of its history can help us see why it's still so important.
Okay, I'm all ears. Take me back in time.
So picture this. It's the 1970s, and IBM, they were like on this mission to make querying data simpler.
Yeah, back then, like, finding specific data was a major headache.
Oh, it was a nightmare. Imagine trying to find a needle in a haystack, but like a million times worse.
Right? There was no Google, no easy search bars.
Exactly. So they came up with SQL, or SQL as it was known then.
Okay, and how'd they make it easier?
They built it on this groundbreaking idea called the relational model.
Okay.
And it was the brainchild of this guy, Edgar F. Codd, a total genius.
Oh, I've heard the name.
Basically, he figured out a way to organize data in a really intuitive way.
Like how?
Think of it like a well-structured spreadsheet, rows and columns.
Right.
So instead of writing this crazy complex code,
Yeah.
you could use these almost English-like commands to get the data you needed.
Ah, that makes sense. So much easier to understand.
Exactly. It was a game changer.
And then...
And then in 1986, SQL got standardized by these organizations,
Yeah.
ANSI and ISO.
Right.
And this was huge
Okay.
because it meant that no matter what database system you were using,
Yeah.
if it was relational,
Mm-hmm.
SQL could talk to it.
Ah, so it became like this universal language for databases.
Exactly. That's
Right.
why it's still so widely used today.
Okay, so we've got the history down, but what exactly makes SQL tick? It's more than just asking questions of your data, right?
Oh, it's way more than that.
Mm.
Think of it like a Swiss Army knife for data.
Okay, the Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, it can query data, manipulate it, define it, control it, even make sure it's all reliable during transactions.
Okay, hold on, break that down for me. What does it mean to, like, manipulate data with SQL?
Sure, so let's say you've got a database
Okay.
and you need to add some new info, update some old stuff, or maybe delete some things that are outdated.
Okay.
That's where commands like insert, update, and delete come in.
Right, so you're basically, like, editing the database.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, and what about defining data?
So that's more about building the actual structure of the database.
Like the framework?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're creating the blueprints, deciding what kind of data each table will hold, how they relate to each other.
So it's like you're the architect of your data world.
You got it. And there's more.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, with data control, you get to decide who has access to what information.
Ah, the security system.
Exactly. Keep sensitive stuff protected. And then there's transaction control.
What's that?
Think of it like a safety net for your data.
Okay.
Imagine you're making a bank transfer.
Oh, okay.
You wouldn't want the money to leave your account,
Yeah.
but not end up in the other person's account.
Right. Oh, that would be a disaster.
Right, that's what transaction control prevents.
Okay.
It makes sure that either all parts of an operation are completed,
Yeah, okay.
or if something goes wrong, everything gets reversed back to how it was before.
Like a giant undo button.
Exactly. It keeps your data safe and consistent.
Okay, so commit flee is like hitting save, and rollback is like hitting undo.
Perfect analogy.
This is making SQL sound incredibly powerful.
It is.
I can see why it's still so widely used.
And there's more good stuff.
Okay, hit me with it.
SQL has some serious advantages that make it super appealing to anyone working with data even today.
All right, I'm ready to be convinced. Tell me why SQL is still so relevant in this day and age.
For one, it's surprisingly easy to learn, especially compared to some other programming languages.
That's good to hear.
It uses these simple English-like commands that are very beginner-friendly.
So I don't need to be a coding genius to get started.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with huge amounts of data,
Yeah.
SQL is built to handle it efficiently.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's thousands, millions, even billions of records. SQL can process it all quickly.
That's pretty impressive.
It is.
But how does it compare to like the newer technologies, the ones specifically designed for big data?
That's a great question. And it actually leads us to some important things to keep in mind when working with SQL.
Okay.
So while it's a rock star at handling structured data,
Mm-hmm.
it might not always be the best fit for massive, unstructured data sets.
So like social media, data, sensor data, that kind of stuff.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
SQL is like a master organizer,
Mm.
perfect for information that fits neatly into tables, like, customer orders in an online store.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But for data that's less structured, like the text of millions of tweets, you might need some specialized tools.
So SQL is a precision instrument for structured data, but maybe not the right tool for every job.
Exactly, you got it.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then there's the flexibility aspect.
Mm-hmm.
SQL databases need this predefined structure,
Oh, yeah.
which can be a bit limiting if your data is constantly changing or you need more freedom in how you organize it.
So it thrives on order.
Yeah, it does.
But sometimes you need a more free-flowing approach.
Right. But even with these considerations,
Yeah.
SQL's core strengths make it incredibly valuable across a ton of applications.
Okay, so where do we actually see SQL in action? Let's talk real-world examples.
Let's do it.
Okay, so lots of applications then. Let's dive into that. Where do we actually see SQL in action?
Well, one of the most common places is in database management.
Makes sense.
Database administrators, or DBAs, they're like the unsung heroes of the data world.
Okay, DBAs.
Yeah, they keep everything running smoothly.
So they use SQL a lot then?
Oh, yeah, it's their bread and butter.
Oh, okay.
They use it for everything from designing and building new databases
Okay.
to making sure all the data is accurate and easy to access.
So they're like the architects, the builders, and the maintenance crew all rolled into one.
Exactly.
That's a lot of hats to wear.
It is, but they handle it like pros.
And I'm guessing SQL also plays a big role in data analysis,
Absolutely.
especially for folks like me who are, curious about understanding data and how to work with it.
Right. Data analysts, they use SQL every day to extract insights from data.
Okay.
They're like the detectives of the data world,
Okay. Detectives.
sifting through mountains of information,
Mhm.
trying to find those hidden gems.
So they're like data storytellers.
Yeah, I like that.
They use SQL to find the story hidden within all the numbers.
That's a great way to put it.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, let's say you're a data analyst at an e-commerce company.
Okay.
You might use SQL to figure out which products are selling well and which ones are just sitting there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that information can help them with marketing strategies, inventory management, even product development.
So SQL is kind of like the engine behind data-driven decision-making.
Exactly.
I bet it's also super important for web development, right?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Most web applications rely on it to manage all sorts of things.
Like what?
User accounts and profiles,
Mm-hmm.
the content we see, the products we buy, even the transactions we make.
Wow. So every time I log into a website, browse an online store stream, a movie SQL is probably working behind the scenes.
Most likely.
That's incredible. Are there any other areas where it's widely used?
Yeah, there's one that's really important in the business world. It's called ETL.
ETL? What's that stand for?
It stands for Extract, Transform, Load.
Extract, transform, load.
It's basically the process of taking data from different sources,
Okay.
cleaning it up, transforming it into a consistent format, and then loading it into a central database or data warehouse.
So it's like taking all these different pieces of a puzzle and putting them together to see the whole picture.
That's a great way to put it.
And SQL is involved in all of that.
Oh, yeah. It's used in every step of the process
Okay.
to extract the data, transform it, and then load it into its final destination.
So it's like a data pipeline.
Exactly.
And SQL is the language that keeps it flowing.
You got it.
Can you give me like a real-world example of how this might work?
Sure. Imagine you're a retailer with both an online store and physical locations.
Okay.
You might use ETL to combine data from your website sales, your in-store point-of-sale systems, and your customer loyalty program.
Okay, so you're bringing all that data together.
Yeah, by combining all that data, you can get a much better understanding of your customers' buying habits, their preferences, and their overall behavior.
So you can start to see patterns and trends that you wouldn't be able to spot if the data was all scattered around.
Right, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And once you have that unified view of your data,
Yeah,
you can use it to make smarter decisions.
about pretty much everything.
Exactly. Everything from marketing and product development to inventory management and customer service.
So it's all about using data to get a competitive edge.
Exactly.
This is giving me a much clearer picture of how SQL is actually used in the real world.
Great.
It's not just about, technical features and commands. It's
Right.
about solving real problems and using data to make better decisions.
Exactly.
Okay, so speaking of commands,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk a bit more about the nitty-gritty. We touched on select earlier for querying data. What are some other essential commands that I should know about?
Well, remember those 5 key categories we discussed?
The data querying, data manipulation, and all that.
Exactly. Each of those categories has its own set of essential commands.
So it's like having a toolbox for each specific task.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, I like that.
So data manipulation language, or DML, is all about taking action on the data itself.
Okay, DML.
Yeah, the main verbs here are insert, update, and delete.
Okay, so insert is for adding new records.
Yep,
Update is for modifying existing records.
that's right.
And delete is for getting rid of stuff you don't need anymore.
Exactly.
So those are your data editing tools.
You got it.
Okay, what's next?
Next, we have data definition language, or DDL.
DDL.
This is the language you use to build the database itself.
Okay, so creating tables, columns, and all that.
Exactly. It's like the architect's blueprint for your data world.
And what are the main commands in this category?
The big 3 are create, alter, and drop.
Okay, so create is for building new tables and structures.
Right.
Alter is for modifying existing ones.
Yep.
And drop is for getting rid of stuff you don't need.
You got it.
So with DML, you're working with the data itself. And with DDL, you're shaping the environment where that data lives.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
What else is there?
Then we have data control language, or DCL.
DCL.
Okay, this one's all about security.
Ah, keeping things safe.
Right, controlling who has access to what information within the database.
So it's like setting up the security system and permissions for your data.
Precisely. The main commands here are grant and revoke. So grant is for giving people access, and revoke is for taking it away.
Exactly.
Makes sense. You wouldn't want just anyone poking around in sensitive information.
Definitely not.
Okay, so we've got DML and DZL and DCL. What's left?
The last one is transaction control language, or TCO.
TCL, okay.
This one focuses on making sure your data is reliable and consistent.
Right, like those commit and rollback commands we talked about earlier.
Yep, those are the stars of TCL.
Making sure that database operations either complete successfully or get reversed if there's a problem.
Exactly. They're crucial for maintaining data integrity.
Especially when accuracy is super important, like with financial transactions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got all these commands and categories. SQL seems incredibly versatile.
It is.
It's like it can handle every aspect of managing and working with data.
Pretty much.
But I'm also curious about the tools and technologies that work alongside SQL. It's not like it exists in isolation, right?
But SQL is often part of a larger ecosystem,
Okay.
a whole team of technologies.
So what are some of the key players on this SQL All-Star team?
Well, first up, you have the Relational Database Management Systems, or RDBMS.
RDBMS, okay.
They're the software platforms where SQL comes to life.
So they're like the homes for the databases.
Exactly.
Okay, what are some of the popular ones?
Some of the big names are MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and Oracle Database.
I've definitely heard of those. Are they all basically the same, or are there key differences?
There are definitely some important distinctions.
Okay.
For example, MySQL and PostgreSQL are open source,
Okay.
which means they're free to use, and they have these huge communities of developers contributing to their development.
That sounds like a good option for smaller organizations or individuals who are just getting started.
It is.
Okay, and what about the others?
Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle Database are commercial products.
Okay.
They're often favored by larger enterprises because they have really robust features and dedicated support.
So there's a SQL solution for pretty much every need and budget, but no matter which RDBMS you choose,
Yeah,
SQL is the language you'll use to interact with the data.
that's right. It's a universal language in the data world.
Okay, so we've got the RDBMS, the platforms that actually manage the data.
Mhm.
But what about when we move into the realm of big data and analytics? How does SQL fit into that picture?
That's a great question. And it's an area where SQL continues to play a vital role.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Even though it might not be the perfect tool for directly analyzing every type of big data,
Right.
it's still a crucial part of the infrastructure.
Okay.
For instance, data warehousing solutions like Apache Hive, Google BigQuery, and Amazon Redshift.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
They use SQL-like query languages to make it easier to work with those massive data sets.
So SQL is still very much present even in the world of big data.
Oh, absolutely. It's essential for things like extracting data, transforming it, and loading it into those data warehouses for analysis.
Okay, that makes sense. And once that data is in a warehouse, what tools do we use to actually make sense of it all?
That's where business intelligence tools come in.
BI tools.
Yeah, things like Tableau, Power BI, and Looker.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of those.
They connect to various data sources,
Okay,
often using SQL,
right.
and then they transform that data into visualizations, dashboards, charts, reports.
So they're like the translators of the data world.
I like that.
Taking the raw information from SQL and turning it into something we can easily understand and use to make decisions.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
They provide the insights, and SQL provides the foundation upon which those insights are built.
And what about those ETL processes we talked about earlier?
Okay.
Are there specific tools for those as well?
There are tools like Talent and Informatica are popular for building and managing those ETL pipelines.
Okay.
They often have these visual interfaces for designing the data flow,
Okay.
but under the hood, they still rely heavily on SQL to do all the heavy lifting.
So no matter how user-friendly these tools become, SQL is still the workhorse behind the scenes.
Exactly. And that versatility, that adaptability, it's part of what makes SQL such a valuable and enduring skill.
It sounds like learning SQL is more than just picking up a technical skill.
It is.
It's almost like gaining a fundamental understanding of how we manage and make sense of information in this digital age.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a framework for thinking about data, organizing it, and extracting those valuable insights. It really feels like the possibilities are endless with SQL.
They really are. And as you explore SQL further, you'll discover even more ways to apply it.
Okay.
Not just in your work, but also in your everyday life.
Wow. This has been eye-opening.
Yeah.
I had no idea how much I'd learn about SQL or how relevant it would be to my own interests.
That's great to hear.
And thanks to you, I feel much more confident about taking those next steps.
Excellent.
So for our listeners who are now eager to dive deeper into SQL, what would you recommend as a next step?
Embrace your curiosity.
Okay.
There are tons of resources available online, from interactive tutorials to in-depth courses,
Right.
all designed to help you deepen your understanding of SQL and its practical applications.
It's like opening a door to a whole new world of possibilities with data.
Exactly.
And as you continue learning,
Yeah.
remember SQL is not just about writing code.
Right.
It's about solving problems, uncovering insights, and making informed decisions based on the power of data.
That's it.
It's about turning data into something meaningful and actionable.
Precisely.
As you gain more experience with SQL, you'll start to see its potential in new and unexpected ways. It'll shape your understanding of the world around you and empower you to make a real impact.
Absolutely.
That's a great point to keep in mind. So for our listeners, now that you have a solid grasp of what SQL is and why it matters, what are you curious to explore further? Databases, data analysis, maybe even learning some basic SQL commands yourself. The possibilities are truly endless.
They are.
Wow. I can't believe we've already covered so much.
It's been a whirlwind tour of SQL.
It really has. From its history to its modern-day applications, we even peeked into the future.
And it's a bright future.
You mentioned earlier that SQL is constantly evolving. Can you give me a specific example of what that looks like?
Sure. One of the most exciting things happening right now is how SQL is being integrated with cloud computing.
The cloud, yeah, everything seems to be moving there.
Exactly. And databases are no exception. Cloud databases like Google BigQuery and Amazon Redshift, they're changing the game.
Okay, how so?
Well, they let us store and analyze massive amounts of data in the cloud.
Right.
And they use SQL-based query languages to do it.
So it's like SQL is hitching a ride on the cloud computing wave?
That's a great way to put it.
And why is that such a big deal?
Well, these cloud platforms are designed to handle the challenges of big data.
Okay.
They offer scalability, flexibility, and cost-effectiveness that traditional databases sometimes struggle with.
Right, and they do all of that while still using SQL.
Exactly. It's the best of both worlds.
So SQL is becoming even more powerful as technology advances.
Absolutely, and it doesn't stop there.
Oh, there's more.
There is.
Oh, yeah.
Another really interesting area is the development of distributed databases.
Distributed databases. Okay, what are those?
These systems spread data across multiple servers,
Okay.
which can lead to some serious performance improvements and better resilience.
Okay, and SQL is involved in this as well.
Oh yeah, it plays a key role in making these distributed databases work.
Wow, so SQL is at the forefront of all these innovations in data management.
In many ways, it is. And its ability to adapt and integrate with these new technologies,
Yeah.
it really shows how versatile and relevant it continues to be.
I'm starting to see that learning SQL isn't just about acquiring a technical skill.
Right.
It's almost like gaining a deeper understanding of how we manage information in this digital age.
That's a great way to think about it.
It's a whole new way of thinking about organizing and extracting insights from data.
Exactly.
The possibilities seem endless.
They really are. And as you continue exploring SQL, you'll find new and innovative ways to use it, not just in your work, but in everyday life.
You know, when we started this deep dive, I had no clue how much I would learn about SQL
Mm-hmm.
or how relevant it would be to my own
I'm
interests.
glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning.
It is.
Oh, yeah, your journey into the world of SQL has just started.
Okay.
There's so much more to discover.
That's exciting. And I have to say, thanks to this deep dive, I feel a lot more confident about taking those next steps.
That's great to hear.
So, for our listeners who are feeling inspired to learn more, what would you recommend as a next step?
I would say the most important thing is to keep that curiosity alive.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment, explore, dive into those online resources. There's so much out there.
That's true. The internet is a treasure trove of information.
It is. And when it comes to SQL, there are tons of tutorials, courses, all sorts of things that can help you.
So, what's the most important thing for them to remember as they continue their SQL journey?
I think the key is to remember that SQL isn't just about writing code. It's about using data to answer questions, solve problems, gain a better understanding of the world around us.
So, it's about turning data into something meaningful and impactful.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive has been amazing. I've learned so much, and I feel like our listeners have too.
Me too. It's been a pleasure exploring the world of SQL with you.
Likewise. And to our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this journey into the fascinating world of SQL.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one making the next big breakthrough in data management.
That's a great thought to leave everyone with. So until next time, keep those questions coming and keep diving deep.